Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the people joining us from different time zones. Welcome to the Africa Federation Education Board Career Roundtable second edition, which we are calling the Students Edition. Today, continuing with our with Africa Federation Education Board's vision to push for more career-related discussions, we are going on with this webinar series. And today we have for you students who are studying in, I guess, different continents. Well, not continents. Three groups of continents. Two people in different countries on the same continent who it was very difficult to find. Our students are extremely busy, especially in this time of COVID-19, and I'm sure they'll tell us more about their experiences. My name is Farhan Yusuf. I'm a pharmacist by profession. We had to have at least one health person on here, right? Otherwise, it's an incomplete panel. So I am going to represent the health side of things. I am also an education board member, and I will be your moderator for tonight. So immediately jumping to the webinar, I will ask our students to now introduce themselves. I am not going to be doing that in those introductions today, and you'll see why. We've asked all our students to tell us a bit about themselves and include their name, where they're coming from, what degree they're currently pursuing, what year they're in, what university they're attending, why they picked that particular degree, what was their application process like, and the big question of the hour, how has COVID-19 affected their studies, if at all? So starting off, I would like to call upon Fatima Khatau to please introduce herself.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fatima Khatau, and I am from Nairobi, currently pursuing a bachelor's degree in international business administration at USIU. Why I chose to pursue a degree in IBA is honestly coming to the decision of doing IBA was not an easy one. I had a phase of confusion and doubt about which path to take. So before I entered A levels, I was certain I'd major in the medical field, and because I had an interest in optometry. But 5 weeks into grade 12, I realized science really isn't my cup of tea. So I consulted with friends, family, career counselors, and before and like that's how I concluded I'd take business. But which area in business would I take? So what I did was hunt for such a course that would allow me to explore more about the business field because I was also not sure what it was that interested me. I liked a lot of things, but at the same time, I wanted something relevant for years down the line. So that's why I chose IBA because it offers a peek into many business fields. And now, 2 years into the studies, I have slowly understood what field it is that I want to lean towards. About the application process, I began hunting for universities within Nairobi that would offer degrees or courses in business. Nairobi, because of plenty reasons, what I'd say, I went through a cost benefit analysis. And after pinning USIU as the university of choice, I spoke to people I knew who went there and I asked them about the application process. And I even physically went to campus and inquired about details and application processes. So they gave me a form to fill about personal details, and it required me to tell them my extracurricular activities as well that I had taken part in high school. And after a month, I received a call to collect the acceptance letter from the office. It basically was simple that way, it was not as bureaucratic as I had anticipated and how COVID-19 has affected my studies currently. It did initially, I initially did face challenges because of the now new way of learning. I had those anxious feelings before every virtual class. I started procrastinating a lot as I wasn't really working in that time discipline. For instance, while we were still going to campus physically, everything was planned hours in advance. So I like need to wake up by this time in order to leave the house by this time so I can catch the bus at this time and finally get to the first class of the day by this time. So everything was done in a timely manner. So, but the online way, however, it gradually made me lose the importance of doing things within a time. I find I also started delaying in starting an assignment. I would begin working on it because the due date was approaching. But I've noticed whatever challenges there has been, I've noted it's not permanent. It's for a short time. You get used to with it. You find ways to overcome it, and for instance, you can make a good time management plan. So it just depends on how you perceive a situation. In a way, through the pandemic, I've been exposed to so many things I barely knew existed. I thought I was tech savvy because I knew how to make a good PowerPoint presentation. Not until I realized how much that there is in the IT world. That just goes to say, if life keeps teaching, why stop learning? So keep an open mind and move. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, Fatima. You know, a lot of the students, I'm sure, right now are wondering. So, Fatima had time management problems only when COVID-19 hit. So, the rest of us who have time management problems throughout the year, anyways, we'll discuss that further, I'm sure. Next, I'd like to go to Wakar.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammed Wakar, and I study BA in filmmaking at the Northern Film School. Back when I was about 14 or 15, I worked on a docu-series about Ramadan, which we shot in Mombasa and was broadcast in the UK. What that did was it gave me a certain taste or a certain hunger for making stuff, for making film, or at least making art, making a contribution, making an artistic contribution, and that's what hooked me onto filmmaking. After O levels, I worked as a freelance art director, and my first client was in fact my own school, and I worked through this, and I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. I got to make stuff, which is what I enjoyed doing. I got to sort of express myself creatively. At the same time, I also shadowed the filmmakers that made the infamous Koja documentary. That's by Mark Media, while they were in Mombasa and Lamu. And after that, I made my first short film, and it was bad. Like, it was really bad. Not as bad as Twilight, but it was bad. But what that did again was it gave me that taste of that, just that jolt to that excitement of making something. And that's when I knew that I had to do something in filmmaking, because there's a hunger that I had, and sort of I went to it. I applied for the course that I'm currently doing, and that was in Leeds Beckett University, which is the Northern Film School, and I had to take the foundation part because I never did A levels. Being an art director did give me this sort of hunger. I mean, it quenched this sort of thirst for making stuff. But what it also did was it tethered me down to a desk and a screen, and that was not for me. So I applied for this course, and the reason I applied for this course is because 70% of it is very practical. We have really good facilities in that we're the only school that has certain cameras which hold a lot of weight in your CV, and that's the reason I chose this school. I feel that if I did A levels, and this is my personal experience, it would have hindered my application to the specific course that I applied to, because the course I applied to are very strict on having a good portfolio and don't really, they don't really weigh a lot in your academic sort of thing. It is still there, but it's just that your portfolio is what really gets you into the school. My course is modeled around industry practices. I'll give an example. All my tutors are all practicing industry professionals. We don't have teachers that just teach. All the teachers that teach us do make films at the same time, and that makes sort of the whole process really industry standard. We also do so we do health and safety, and the people who do our health and safety is an actual company that does health and safety for BBC and ITV. I shoot in studios that are also used by BBC and ITV. My cinematography teacher, he is a Oscar-nominated cinematographer. So we do work with industry professionals when we're studying. And with this experience, sort of the way I've been affected by COVID is the same way the industry is affected by COVID. We negotiate and sort of we work through it. But I feel what really affected me for COVID was during my break, my summer break, I do a lot of industry projects, a lot of industry productions. So for instance, last year, I worked on 3 industry productions. They were really good and they really boost my CV and gave me a lot of connections. But this year, because of COVID, that's where I've been hit the most, not being able to work in the industry. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Wakar. And I think it's very interesting that COVID-19 has not just affected, the academic side of it, but even these other elements, which I personally think are very important in terms of like placements and projects and other activities that I think students should be engaging in. So thank you so much for that, Fatima.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Fatima Balu. So I was born in the States, but I grew up in Dar es Salaam, so in Tanzania. And my degree is kind of a mouthful, but I'm doing a bachelor's in politics, rights, and development. And I'm double minoring in French and media, cultures, and communications. So for my major, personally growing up, I always loved politics. I always wanted to be a lawyer for a lot of my life. I knew I wanted to do something around that. Growing up, I did IB and I found that I loved history and I loved knowing the way that countries relate to one another, how wars and peace started, how wars came to be, and the relationship that it caused later on. So when I applied to NYU, one of the degrees that they had was something called Politics, Rights, and Development, which examined the historical context and controversies surrounding social action. So power and policy, justice and human rights, and economic and social development. So it related not only to international relations, but it took it into account history and the relationships that our cause later on. Which is why then I decided to pursue politics, rights, and development rather than something like law or just international relations. For my minors, I picked French because one of the things that I want to do later on is work for the United Nations, and the United Nations has 2 official languages, one being English and the second being French. So knowing French provides an upper hand that others wouldn't have. And for media, cultures, and communications, I think being able to communicate and verbalize and knowing how to be diplomatic and present oneself is a great thing to have constantly. And I think it worked well with the rest of the things that I wanted to do, especially working for the UN, where being diplomatic and being able to present oneself is so, so important. So like I said, I go to NYU, New York University, which is based in New York, and there are global campuses as well, like Abu Dhabi and Shanghai. And the application process for NYU is a bit different than other schools in the US. And that's because you do not have to submit both your SATs or ACTs and your high school grades, whether it's A levels or IB, etc. For NYU, you can pick to only submit one or the other or both. It's up to you. But NYU does need 2 essays. One is your college essay that you write generally to universities, and one is a personal essay where you write about what you want to do, why NYU is the school for you. So it's kind of like a personal essay that UCAS schools, so British schools, need as well. And I think that's very important that's kind of where universities see how badly you want to go, like how much of a passion that you have for the school you want to go to, and whether or not you know what you want to do in the future. Like it's trying to see how fit you are for the school itself. And I feel like when I was applying, NYU kind of changed what I wanted to do. It kind of guided me in what major I wanted to do. Like I said, I wanted to do law for so long, and I knew I loved history as well. I knew I loved relationships between countries and international relations as well. But I didn't know of a way to connect the two. And so when I was doing my own research about what universities and what majors I wanted to get into, NYU kind of made me think about where I want to go in the future. So for people applying to university, I think that's a great way to figure out what you want to do. Like, not only look at how good a school is, but look at how well it fits for you. Look at something you want to do, even if you're unsure in the beginning, and how it brings you to be the person you want to be in the future. And obviously, relating to Corona and COVID-19, New York was one of the states that was hit the worst in like March. And I think when it did hit us, it was kind of instantaneous. Everything closed down immediately. Stores were emptied out because everyone was so scared. They didn't know what was happening. They just know there was like this virus that was coming through the country, killing people, and no one knew how to handle themselves. They didn't know what precautions to take. So I think when it did happen, New York was taken back, especially being an epicenter of the world where it's constantly moving. It's literally called the city that never sleeps. I think everyone was kind of taken back by it. Alhamdulillah, now it's one of the safest states, but I think at the time it was insane. Schools shut down. So for example, NYU shut down, and they had asked all students living on campus. So for example, for me, I lived in the dorms. They had asked all students on campus to return back home because it was unsafe. And I think one of the biggest struggles I faced was definitely the time difference. All my classes were now in the middle of the night, so I had to switch my entire schedule. I think, like Fatima Katao said, like you needed to be on top of your things. There was nothing but a deadline. You had to just make sure you knew what you were doing. Whereas when you're in college, you have a routine. You know what's gonna come next. You know what you're supposed to do. But because everyone was so taken back, I think the way in which everything was online, it was confusing. It was a bit like, it gave everyone a bit of anxiety. You didn't know what to expect. You didn't know when it was ending. You didn't know how anything was going. So I think when everything went online, it was tough just because not only did you not know how to continue your studies, we were worried, would anything go back to normal? I think alhamdulillah, it's much better than it was. But it was definitely like a scary period for everyone, not just the States, but Europe, like Africa. Tanzania, alhamdulillah, is fine. But everywhere else in the world, we were all kind of taken back. So it didn't matter what school you went to, whether there was a time difference like there was for me, but it was more so to do with the fact that you didn't know what the future was holding. For the first time, we were all very confused. We couldn't plan. You couldn't be organized. So if anything, I think that was how COVID affected me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Fatima. I think the one thing that I definitely noted from your introduction and your sharing is for students to participate in the process of application. I think that's very important, and especially because I know a huge topic of discussion, and if we get some time on this webinar, maybe we'll sort of divulge into that, is this growing culture of students utilizing recruiters and other sort of people to do the application process, and sort of that value of participating in the process themselves is sort of lost. So we'll probably discuss that a bit later. Moving on to Isa, you know why I kept you last, right? As Fatima said, there's no COVID in Tanzania, so your studies are probably not affected at all. But anyways, tell us more about that.
That's a bit debatable. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Isa, and I am from Tanzania. I'm currently pursuing my Bachelor of Science in Computer Sciences at the University of Dar es Salaam. Why I picked that particular degree? I wanted to get into the technology field, and I wanted to do it as quickly as possible because there's been a lot of emphasis on the necessity of degrees and the importance they potentially play, though I would say in the technology ecosystem that has become very debatable. And around Form 4 is when I started exploring what potential avenues are there in technology and getting into the ecosystem. How would I get into it? I had no idea. I found the fastest way I could get in, and that's how I chose computer sciences. And now I am doing a double major in computer science and mathematics. That's by the design of the university degree. And the application was straightforward enough because it's a national university. We get, if you've studied international curriculum, you get your grades converted, and then you just apply normally. They have an online platform, so that's not really much of a problem. How COVID affected my studies, it was straightforward as university shut down for 2 months. Our university felt they did not have the systems necessary for students to do online learning, and they had begun creating the systems they feel would be appropriate for the students. But before they could finish, universities had reopened. So I basically got a 2 month holiday to focus on a lot of other things, and that's how it affected me.
Okay, thank you so much, Isa. See, you didn't have a lot to say, I told you. But we'll discuss a bit more on these extra things that you've spoken about and how you utilize your time during the university shutdown. So thank you guys for that, introduction from all of you. I have a few additional questions for us to dive into more specifically for each of you, and then we'll open it up to the crowd for any questions or any queries that they may have. So I'll move on to Wakar this time. We'll start with you. So Wakar, I personally, and we were having a discussion before the webinar started, I'm a huge promoter of the arts and careers that are related to the arts. And by arts, I don't mean accounts and business, which is what I think, especially in Tanzania, that's how we think of it. That when we say arts, it's accounts and business and science. So I don't know where some of these other careers go, but personally, I'm very passionate about arts, and I definitely think we should promote careers in that area a bit more. But I also, based on experience, careers such as filmmaking are not very common in this side of the world. I mean, let's talk about East Africa. So what are your thoughts about that, and what kind of opportunities, now that you are 2 years into your degree, what are the opportunities that you have seen so far, and do you plan to come back and use some of your skills back home?
Mhm. Well, to begin with, I think it's quite unfortunate that there isn't a push for the art subjects or the creative subjects, as far as not only studying but also pursuing an actual career in it. I mentioned earlier is that the reason I'm doing this is because of big two reasons. Is one, I do not want to be tethered on a desk and stare at a screen every day, or for 9 to 5. And secondly, is that just that for a certain group of people, you could just sort of figure out whether it's psychological or whatever. But creative people have an urge of creating things, and that's what makes art this sort of brilliant and wonderful thing. And it's also the reason why not everybody can do it per se. And it's really unfortunate that we do not have more of promotion of these careers and subjects, because at the end of the day, there's so much wasted talent that is gone into an accountant. I'm not trying to offend any accountants, but as far as the opportunities are concerned in East Africa, I know one thing, and this is I kind of this was in the back of my head before I even sort of left Kenya to come to the UK for university. Kenya back in 2016 or 2017 introduced this new sort of rule in which all local broadcasters had to increase their local content quite significantly, about 30%. Before, there was just about 5%. I think it was just like on every TV channel just had like one or two TV productions for the whole week during prime time. But now it's like every night we have local TV productions during prime time. So that's one thing which really boosted the industry as far as Kenya is concerned. I'm not too sure about Dar es Salaam if they have these rules, but I do know that Dar es Salaam do have a lot of productions, local productions that sort of they boost, especially considering that while Kenya is sort of Swahili, but also mostly English speaking, sort of there's a lot of English content that works. But in Tanzania, because English is not spoken that much, there's a lot of more of local content, and that's one avenue of sort of opportunities when it comes to Africa. But I would also like to sort of put a caveat that if you're going into specifically filmmaking, filmmaking is the thing where you cannot be tied down. You can't base, well, you can, but sort of, you're better off sort of working while traveling, and working in all sorts, all places, not just one place.
Okay, thank you for that, Wakar. And maybe at some point we can compare East and West Africa, because I know in Nigeria, for example, there's students who make films using, very, very basic equipment, and there's definitely a lot. And of course, there's the infamous discussion that again we had before the webinar that was about TikTok and how much talent is going on that platform. I think next I would go to Fatima Ballu with your, definitely a mouthful of a degree. I'm sure all the students are wondering, when does she sleep? With all the things that you're doing, and my question would be sort of related to that, Fatima. So I think moving from high school to university, one of the biggest sort of anxieties that students have is around workload at university level, and considering the majors and the minors that you're doing, I'm sure your workload is quite a bit. So can you provide some your experience, number one, and then just some general self-management tips for our students watching today?
So I think one of the biggest things that helped me with my time management was having done IB. Honestly, if you ask me, I think IB was a worse workload than university is, only because you have to do so much, and it IB expects a lot out of you. And obviously it does help out. I think IB helped me in university, especially because a lot of the things we did in IB, like a lot of the books we had to read, I had to read my first year of university. I think when it comes to time managing yourself, everyone is different. So for example, for me, I enjoy knowing when I finish something. So I put things on a list. I write everything that I have to do on a list, and as I finish them, I cross them out, and it kind of makes anxiety and stress decrease as you see you're finished one thing, you're finished the second. I think when you have everything in your mind and you don't write it down, or you don't have a way to see everything you have to do, you stress yourself more by thinking about how much stress you have. And I feel like when your mind isn't at ease, you can't get anything done. Like there is no way, because you're constantly wondering about what you have to do next, how you're going to accomplish it, how you only have a certain amount of time in a day. Like with classes, once you come back, it's about 3 p.m. Then you'll finally eat something. It's 4, and you only have like 3 hours to do something before your attention span will, decrease again. So it's about managing yourself both mentally, physically, but also in the way of education. So I think sleeping really well is a big, huge thing to do. I think I have friends that will pull all-nighters for like 3 days, and then they won't be able to do anything for the rest of the week, which obviously isn't an efficient way of time. You end up wasting 4 days, and you end up working really hard and only not getting as much out of what you've done. So I think being able to keep in mind of your day and your routine, which is why I was saying like having a routine during college before COVID-19 was so great, because you were able to manage your time wisely. You knew exactly how your day would start, how you wanted your day to end, and the time in between that you had to finish any workload that you had to do. So I think for me, for example, like I said, I enjoy writing things down and being organized and having to cross things out, just so at the end of the day, I know I finished this, like I feel a little bit accomplished. Encouraging yourself is such a big thing, especially when you have so much to do. For right now, during COVID-19, I think just keeping yourself, reminding yourself that, like even though, let's say you can't go outside, like a lot of places in the States, you can't even leave your home. But reminding yourself that you need to kind of make a routine, even if it's a skeleton of a routine and it's not an exact, like from this time to this time, from this time to this time, but it's about knowing that you can't just not do anything. It's knowing and giving yourself that chance to kind of start again. Because I feel like if everyone just kind of gives up and doesn't do anything, you'll fall into depression. You'll feel like there's no coming out of it. And I think being positive is so, so, so important. Um, so writing things down, not just staying on your computer. I don't remember who said it, but just to sit and watch like movies on your laptop is not being productive. It's not helping anyone. In fact, it'll make you feel more lazy, and then it's harder to come out of it. So just remembering to kind of have a routine for yourself. Like I said, even if it's just a skeleton, even if it's just, you know what, I'm going to go for a run today. I'm going to just go for a run and clear my mind. I'm going to kind of forget all of the problems and the chaos that's happening around the world. And right now, with everything being online, I think it's a great way for education to spread. Like, for example, over the summer, I was tutoring kids in Dar. While I was in Dar, I was tutoring kids and helping them figure out how to learn, because everybody's scared just now. They don't know how school is going to go back to normal. And so it's a great way to like provide education for other people. So something as normal as tutoring can go such a long way. It gives you a routine. When I was tutoring, I knew from 11 to 1 every day, I had something to do. It wasn't just doing nothing or thinking, oh, maybe I should go out. Oh, maybe I should eat something. It's about being productive, being positive, kind of relieving your mind of the stress that, you know, the world has around everywhere. I know that in Tanzania it's really nice and there's no corona, but it's frightening to think, you know, tomorrow someone can bring it in from the airport. Someone can just come in with no symptoms and that's it. It's over. So I think being positive is definitely number one. And number two is finding a way to have yourself in check, to have a routine, to have things that you want to get accomplished in the day. And I mean, baby steps make such a long way later on. So that's the advice I would give to anybody else that needs to time manage or thinks that, like, you know, they can't be productive.
Wise words for sure, Fatima. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, and it's really helpful, especially in this time. And I think being able to see the positives in everything going virtual, because I often have these discussions with students whereby some, like Fatima mentioned earlier, that she thought she was tech savvy, but then realized that she had so much more to learn. So what I usually tell people is, I think this virtual way of doing things is here to stay with us. I mean, we also have discussions around a lot of companies going completely remote and asking people to indefinitely work from home. So I think accepting that this is something that's coming, and then using our time to build our capacity to manage this situation better would definitely be more helpful in terms of the anxieties. So Fatima Khatau, a question about your degree, right? You're studying international business, uh, and I feel like in hearing students, I have heard discussions around business. So one of two things. So number one, many people now tend to believe, especially because we have this whole entrepreneurship sort of bulge happening everywhere. So I've heard discussions around why should I do a business degree? Is it important for me to do a business degree? So that's number one. And then another thing is also, for those people who want to do business degrees, they say, but the business degree is a very vague degree in the sense that yeah, so it's business, but what's the specificity? And you mentioned earlier that, in your process of studying, you've sort of been able to zero in on what path you want to take beyond the degree. So can you tell us a bit about that? What has been your experience so far? Do you think a degree in business is actually helpful, and how did you go about making it more specific for yourself?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm glad you asked this question. Oh, now, it's something that I was also questioning myself as I was filling the admission form. But I must say, business administration is designed to provide students with a strong academic foundation in business functions. So the purpose of an IBA degree is to open the door for variety of opportunities in diverse career paths. So from my experience, it also makes you understand what it is that truly interests you. So, like my uni, it offers me a peek into 5 types of business paths, namely marketing, management, entrepreneurship, accounting, and finance. In addition to general education courses, as well as IT courses, and even languages. So in the initial years, when we take the foundation courses in all 5 areas, after that you have to decide on a concentration in any of those fields. You could take a single concentration or even a double concentration. So as a first time university student, I was pretty sure I'd take marketing as my concentration. But later on, as I had a feel of the basic courses and interacted with people, the mind seemed to change. So I started to understand myself more and that I actually liked numbers. So it's like a huge contrast to the person I was in high school who preferred theory related subjects. So eventually I leaned towards accounting and it's now my concentration. But I don't plan to stop there. So now that I know I like accounting, I plan on doing a professional qualification in, say, ACCA. So what I'm trying to say is that for a person who might not be sure about which business route to lean into, it's quite useful to do IBA. As you do the degree, as you grow doing it, you have changes in your mindset, you understand yourself better as well. So you will come to the conclusion that, you know what, I'm actually interested in this path more than what I had thought I do. You might think that the degree is general, but you're actually going to concentrate or specialize in something through the journey of you pursuing that degree. And if you learn that this is the field that you want to specialize in, then go ahead, do a professional qualification in it if you want. For instance, like I said, for accounting, you could do ACCA. If you want to specialize in management, you could do ABE, something like that. And to address that question about why should you do business, so there are good career prospects for it. So the thing is, because IBA is a broad degree, it introduces you to a range of skills that employers are looking for. So with that degree, you can get job opportunities in management, marketing, accounting, corporate finance, consultancy, or even human resource. That's just a few. There's so many out there. And that's not all, yeah? The degree makes you think. Example, how to manage diverse teams, like a group that is from different backgrounds, how you would manage them, how to improve financial performance, what strategies you could use to reach, international customers. Those are just some examples of what you could do with that degree. You're, you're actually making your mind grow. So I must say it's a valuable degree. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Fatima. I think students, as they finish high school and move towards university, are sometimes so hooked up on knowing exactly what they want to do that they forget that the process. So first of all, continuous learning is an extremely important element and an extremely important skill to have, and also to realize that you are bound to learn more about yourself as you go through this process, and then be able to find some of those answers that you may not have initially. So thank you for sharing that, Fatima. Isa, I have the unfair advantage of knowing some of your extracurricular activities in Tanzania. So obviously my next question to you is going to be about, in your opinion, and I know Wakar slightly touched on this as well when he mentioned that he participates in projects and all that. But if you can tell us from your experience, what the importance of extracurricular activities is generally for a student pursuing their higher education, and also share with us some of your examples. And I'm very keen on that, because when it comes to local education, there's always this feeling that there's not much to do, or the education system is very theoretical and there are no opportunities to sort of broaden your learning. So how does your extracurricular activities help you in that?
Thank you. So the way I see extracurriculars, and this is through disclaimer first, this is through my experience studying specifically at the University of Dar es Salaam, and depending on where you take the course and the variations that come with a similar degree's name, your mileage may vary, because if you go for a degree called software engineering, you'll see that there are concepts that overlap, but there are key parts that are missing. And again, depending on universities, that changes as well. So anyone looking at any type of tech degree, I'd say first look at the specific courses and modules you're going to be doing under that. And with technology, it's the reason that extracurriculars are very needed, in my opinion, is because the universities have a lot of concepts to teach a student, and they aren't able to go very much in depth into each of the concepts. Within a single semester, I've touched everything from hardware to software to back end to front end. And just enough for the teachers to say this person has an introduction, they should be able to do something on their own. And that's where the extracurriculars come in. Does this person do something on their own? When I graduate from university and I have a GPA that's close to another 20 other students, what's my differentiating factor? When I go look for a job or go do anything, what makes me different? And that's also what makes the technology field unique in terms of degree requirements, because a lot of times the employers are looking at what skills do you have? What have you done with what you are supposed to have learned at the university? Because a lot of the skills and topics we're taught are directed towards application basis. Build a website, build a mobile application, build something that helps this group of people. There's a lot of building involved. And if we rely on only what the university prescribes, then I wouldn't have built very many useful things. And the same reason causes that someone without a degree can be weighed at the same level as someone with a degree due to the projects they have done, the extracurricular activities. In an ideal world, we'd have a good balance of both, but getting that becomes tricky. I feel that in developing countries, there are a lot more opportunities for extracurricular, because a lot more people at the beginning stages and startups and things like that are willing to look for anyone to come on board who supports the mission and vision, who are ready to do whatever is necessary. And part of that, the amount of information I would learn within 2 weeks or a month in a startup is equivalent to what I've learned in an entire semester at my university. And being able to do both gives that good balance of the theory and the practical. As we move towards the future, that balance is becoming very much more sided towards not necessarily having degrees, with people like Google offering certification, 3-month, 4-month long certifications that they claim are going to be weighed at the same level as someone who's done a 4-year college degree in a similar field. That's causing a lot of interesting developments. And at the end of the day, any career in technology is going to be dependent on what experience do you have in the real world. And that's the value that is there with extracurriculars, because if you do not find that way to differentiate yourself, to show that even though I may not have done a full-on 4-year degree, 3-year degree, I still have the skills necessary to be useful to do what I need to do in the job. And if you also have a degree on top of that, that carries the weight in terms of just understanding that this student has been able to go through this entire process. There still are some benefits for degrees in certain fields, but that's an entirely different conversation. And so the particular activities I'm currently engaged in, there are 2 main ones for the time being that I would highlight. I'm a project manager for a company that deals with innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. And depending on the projects that come on board, we work to manage and implement them. And at the same time, I'm the community manager and overall manager of an initiative called Tanzania AI Lab that focuses on the implementation of artificial intelligence for social good, which is basically how do we get more people to think about this technology in a way that helps our local people. And the amount of exposure and information I've gotten in the 1 year that I've been doing both of these activities I feel has already prepared me more than my degree ever will.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing those very interesting, but I would almost say very controversial thoughts, Isa, because I know uh, I think being in the sector, it's easy and you see some of these developments and some of these changes. But I know within our communities, within our, even within like Tanzania or within the East African region, which is where all of us are pretty much originally from, it's very difficult to have these conversations. And I know students often face challenges even explaining some of these things to parents, and even amongst themselves. So just as a sort of taste of some of the things that we want to do as the Education Board of Africa Federation is that in the future we'll probably have one webinar where we'll be discussing with parents to hear their sort of views as well and their understanding of what's happening in the world out there as far as education is concerned, but then also one webinar where we would like to discuss alternative routes. So if I am not, and we definitely have students who maybe do not want to go through the traditional pathways of getting a degree, what are other sort of options? What is there a diploma way that I can go? Maybe even discuss about startups and the whole innovation space, which is really growing right now. And many a times, as you rightly mentioned, doesn't even require particular degrees or qualifications. So thank you for that insight. I know it's going to be, and I could see even Fatima Ballu being very impressed by hearing that there's artificial intelligence in Tanzania. So my mission for today is accomplished. Uh, so yeah, thank you so much, guys. Those were questions on my end. I'm checking the groups here, and we don't really have any questions from the public yet. So just a reminder that if there's anyone who has any questions, queries, please put them on the comments and we will address them. In the meanwhile, as we give time to some of the audiences to maybe share their questions, I actually have one question that I would like all of you to answer for me really quickly. And that is, so as a student, when you are transitioning from high school to university, what was one piece of advice that you got that you consider the best? And what is one piece of advice that you consider the worst? I'm asking this because I know students get a lot of advice from people when they're making that transition, and it's actually something that you might be experiencing still as well. And I'm talking so much so that you guys can think about it. But yeah, so if you can tell me one piece of advice that you got that you think was the best for you, and one that wasn't too good. Anyone to start?
I don't mind going first.
Choice.
It's basically what I already said. The best advice is that I'm going to have to do a lot of work on my own, because the what we're going to learn here may not properly prepare me for the real world. And the second piece of advice that probably wasn't the best, now that I'm actually into the ecosystem, is that degrees matter.
So I see, Isa, you have decided to just go all controversial on us this evening. But thank you for those. Who wants to go next? Okay, so since there's no takers, I'll pick on someone. Fatima Katau, do you want to tell us?
Yes, sure. So one of the advices I got is making friends, but not just friends, making the right friends. Granted, we need some form of company as we maneuver our way through uni life, but it's necessary to be mindful of whom you call a friend. So get someone that will motivate you to go to the library, to at least crack open your notes. Get someone who is mindful of time. It was actually hard for me to call someone a friend in my first semester in the uni because I was shy to approach people. But then eventually you overcome these, but make sure to make the right friends. Some of the advices that I would get was like, the uni I'm going to is not the right one. And, it's just up to you. It's your mindset. It's how you are going to discipline yourself over there. And I've not experienced any challenges that they were telling me I would, like this in terms of reputation and all. I find that the uni was fine. And for me, what I was telling myself is that if I focus on being modest and everything, then it's okay. Like, I wouldn't feel like what they were saying about the uni is, yeah, yeah, that's the advice I was getting. It wasn't the best.
Thank you.
Actually,
Thank you
to
for
carry off of Fatima, sorry,
yeah,
to
yeah,
carry off of
sure, sure.
Fatima, I just remembered one of the worst pieces of advice I got when I was applying to university. I had not only applied to schools like I thought I would get into, but I applied to schools that I thought were a little bit out of my reach. Like they needed the best grades, they needed whatever. And some of my teachers had told me, like, there's no point in applying, like, you're not going to get in, don't even try, like, you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think that, for example, like NYU, for example, I was told not to apply because they said that they expect the best grades out of you, like, you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think that kind of makes it hard for you to even try anything. If you constantly think, oh, I'm going to fail, you're never actually going to put yourself out there. And so that was definitely one of the worst pieces of advice I got. One of the best, I think, from my parents, I guess, to just remember the foundation that you had and to be positive. Like, you don't forget what they raised you on, like namaz, is keeping that even in your long and busy schedule. I think not forgetting the foundation that you have and just being positive no matter what happens. Like, everything happens for a reason. Like, Allah has a plan. So being positive constantly is very important too.
Thank you, Fatima. Wakar.
Yeah. Okay. What's his name? Baz Luhrmann, sort of, he's got this poem. It's called Sunscreen. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's something that is very famously recited or sang in graduations. And in this poem, he says, "Be careful whose advice you buy, but be patient with those who supply it. Advice is a form of nostalgia. Dispensing it is a way of fishing the past from the disposal, wiping it off, painting over the ugly parts, and recycling it for more than it's worth." And that's sort of quite compelling to me, at the very least, is because you hear so much advice and you can't know whether the advice you're about to follow is good advice or bad advice until the effects sort of takes. But I think the one thing that somebody's told me which really impacted me in a positive way was, this is somebody who's, I sort of have a certain level of respect towards him. He said, "I'm not worried about you." And that alone sort of boosted my confidence quite a lot. And that's positive. As far as negative advice is concerned, I don't know if I've got any. Maybe I have. I've just probably forgotten it because I tend to forget things I don't like anyway. So
Okay.
yeah.
So drown out the not so positive advice. I think, well, since I've been a student too, though a long time ago, I think I think personally one of the worst advices that I got was actually bunk classes. They're not important. And while some of you over here might agree, I think it's really important for students to know what works for them. I think generally, as far as advice is concerned, and I that was a very thoughtful poem that you shared with us, Wakar. I think what I usually just generally share with people is listen to advice, because most of the times, people are well meaning, even though they're giving you advice from their frame of understanding and their frame of reference. So be someone who takes in, but then make sure you use what works for you, because I think people often forget that we are very different people, right? While someone can bunk classes and then catch up later on, for some of us, like myself, who are auditory learners, it's very important to be in class and to listen and to so these things don't really, there's no one size fits all. So I think generally, and thank you, there's a lot of good advice that you people shared even in this sharing. But yeah, just soak in the advices, but then make sure you know what exactly works for you. And I think good advice that I received was very similar to Fatima, in that there's nothing that's really out of your reach. Just try, and even if you don't get it, learn from the process, which is something that Fatima, I believe, had mentioned earlier also, that just the process of applying adds something to you, asks you to question yourself in a way that we don't think otherwise. I see one comment here from a student, I believe, who says we do get a lot of negativity, but we always have to be positive when making the best decision. So thank you for that. Definitely a very relevant point. So we spoke quite a bit. I didn't realize that we've come, very close to our time of closing. And since I don't see any questions, I think we can do that. So I think as we end, once again, we'll do a round of, the same question for all of you guys. And I'd like you to tell us two things. Number one is, in your application process, what is one thing that would have helped you apply better, or something that would have helped you in your application process? And then just any last piece of advice or that you want to give the students, especially keeping in mind this time of COVID-19. This year has been a very interesting year for our high schoolers because of exams getting cancelled and predicted grades being used for final grades. And so there's been quite a, one of my favorite words is kerfuffle. So there's been quite a kerfuffle when it comes to the whole education sector. So what would your last piece of advice be? Can we start with Fatima Ballu this time?
Yeah, that's fine. I think one of the things I wish I did better when I was applying, um, or well, I wish like I knew from before, was not to only listen to what everybody else said, where everybody else said to apply. I think when you're applying for university, everyone wants to go to an Ivy League school, everyone wants to go to Oxford and Cambridge, and they want that name. When obviously a name is nice, but where you want to go and what you want to study really depends on you as a person. Like I think it was Wakar who was saying where he is just now has amazing like filmmaking equipment and things like that. And I think he would have only known that if he did the research himself and found it out for himself rather than just listening to everybody who might have said go here or go there. So I think when I first started applying, I definitely thought about, I want to go to a great school, like I want to have that. And later on is when I realized, like I said, like I looked at the NYU majors that they had, and I changed my entire idea on what I wanted to do in my future, which is so, so, so important. And I think it helps you as a person rather than, you're going in to do something that you enjoy. Not only you're studying it, so you'll want to retain that information, but you'll later on be able to pursue something you enjoy, which just helps you lead a positive lifestyle as well.
Okay. Yeah. So is that your last sort of word of advice as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Fatima. Wakar?
Yeah. Okay. As far as my application process is concerned, I feel I had a really strong application to the point where I got an unconditional offer. But if you're doing an art or anything in the creative sort of field, what you're judged on is your portfolio. So you want to work on a really good portfolio, really hone in on it. So for my personal experience, personally, my portfolio involved like 3 really high-end productions, which I had the opportunity to work on before I went to university, and that was a really strong portfolio that really got me into it. So if you want to do a creative subject, if you want to do an art subject, or going to university in that field, portfolio. I'd say the last piece of advice I'd give, again, I'm just going to sort of focus on the art subjects because I'm a bit of like a lone wolf here. is it's not as glamorous as it looks, um, but it's not. So when you think about the arts, or creative industries, you think of this wonderful, brightly lit sort of Hollywood sort of level thing. It's not that, but it's really satisfying. There's a certain if you have this sort of hunger for making things, do it. Don't waste your time. Make like doing something that you're not going to enjoy, because at the end of the day, you are going to get nihilistic and you are going to get cynical, come down when you're 40 years old. So just do do what you need to do to sort of satisfy your creativity, if you are the sort of person who's inclined towards being creative.
Thank you, Wakar. Isa?
So for the application process, applying locally was really not a problem. They only cared about the grades. They didn't need me to write any essays or anything like that. So if you're looking to apply locally, it's not that hard of a process. But I would still encourage, even if someone's looking to apply locally, still try and apply internationally, because like it's already been said, that application process itself helps one learn so much about themselves. I've tried applying internationally as well. I made some bad mistakes early on in terms of that application process, but I did learn quite a bit about what I'm interested in. And moving towards the technology advice side of things, I would actually say a lot of the sentiment and words expressed by Wakar still apply in the technology space, because a lot of people are getting into technology because of things like app development, web development, and as much as one would think it's more computer related and things like that, it still requires a lot of creativity to get on board, to the extent that I've decided, you know what, the technical life maybe isn't fully for me. I will find others who are more into the technical thing, and it still carries weight to have that portfolio of things you've built, things you've done, that still applies. And one more thing I'd like to add, building on the friends aspect of thing, whether I have the company or not, whether anyone has the company or not, try to go to events and settings and things that are happening that interest you, to whatever level they interest you, be it alone or with a group of people. Go to those places, because that's where you'll meet the people who think similarly. You meet the people who have interests that may inspire you, and you get a bit more direction into the careers and things you're going. These extracurricular activities that I started, they didn't just fall in my lap. It didn't just see an application online and applied. I walked up to the CEO of one of the companies and told the guy, I want an internship at your company. So a lot of these things, it's about taking that step on your own, because there won't always be someone there to help. Maybe that's a bit pessimistic, but prepare for the worst, hope for the best. No matter what, just find a way to go for it if it interests you.
Thank you, Isa. Fatima?
About the application, I'm grateful for getting enough info regarding about it. So it was not also much of a challenge for me. A last piece of advice is learn to be okay with being on your own. You will learn a lot about yourself. So be happy with Solace. It's a chance to be independent, and you're going to be able, it's going to push you to do things. So be okay with being alone.
Thank you so much, guys, for sharing. It's a Saturday, evening for most of us. For some of us, it's during the day. Thank you so much for making this time today. It has been an amazing experience. I have personally learned a lot from your experiences, and I hope the students and parents and whoever it is was with us or who will watch this later on will definitely learn a lot from this, and will probably get in touch if they have any further questions. So thank you guys a lot. Thank you to the people who joined us this evening. The recording should be available. Please, if you find it useful and if you think it would help other people, make sure you share. Do like and subscribe to our pages. We'll have many more programs like this in the future. Before I close, I was asked to do an announcement that there's another program tomorrow morning for those who would be able to join. It's a workshop organized by the Africa Federation Capacity Building Group, especially for the holy month of Muharram that's coming up. Karbala in You, a search within. Those who are able to join, please do so. It's for people of individuals 16 to 24 years old, with a world-renowned motivational speaker and business coach, Dr. Mahmoud Mauji. So the link is available for registration. It should be there on all our social media profiles. So yeah, please do join if you can. So yeah, thank you so much. This is it for today. Have a good evening, day, wherever you guys are. Stay safe.